All right, so y'all, I'll be honest with you. I like writing this sermon out for today. I had this. I guess it was a good intro that I was planning on doing, and I'm sitting in the back and I'm worshiping God, and just in the middle of worshiping God, God's just like, nah, you're not gonna go with that. You're gonna tell a story. Who likes stories? Anybody like stories? It's gonna be about the first fight I saw in high school, right? So buckle in, strap in, because it was deadly. No one died, but inside of my soul, I was terrified that I might die. So here's what had happened. Scene opens. No, I was not. I was just standing there. Let me tell the story. I haven't even started telling the story yet. Hang on, let me tell the story. So what had happened was, it did not go on Instagram. What had happened was, I'm in high school, I'm walking down the hallway, I'm a freshman, right? So I'm just trying to I'm 5'10", so I'm trying to duck under and trying to pretend like no one sees me. And I'm watching, and all of a sudden, I see this girl kind of, I don't know how she did it, but she kind of like grabbed a girl's shirt and just kind of like pushed her away. And I guess the other young lady realized her shirt was stretched, and that was a bad thing, because the next thing I know is I see someone's body, and this woman was not small, fly, and like her legs flail in the air, fly, hit the wall, she hits the ground. The lady, it's two girls by the way, punches her in the head as she's falling and knees her in the head. And I'm sitting there just like, oh, that combo. Oh my goodness. But then I just spit on the ground. But then I'm looking and thinking, what do I do in this situation? Like, how do I respond to this? Because I knew when I was going through orientation, that kind of stuff, they said, hey, look, all right, don't fight in school, zero tolerance. Got that, easy, awesome. My parents have said that all my life. But the next thing I said is, hey, don't be around fights in school, because if you're near it, you might get in trouble also. Guilty by association. I was just like, I want to back away, but I want to watch. I'm not really sure what to do. How do I should I try and break it up? I might die. Because, y'all, look, maybe they were juniors or seniors, I don't know. But they look like they knew what they were doing, all right? They knew what they were doing, and they were just throwing rounds, and one girl was just getting wailed on. The other one was trying to defend, but it was bad. It was really, really bad. And in that situation, I was just like, should I respond? Should I do something? Should I not do something? I don't really know. Have any of y'all ever been in a situation where you had an option, right? You had a choice. You could do something, but you weren't really sure if it was the wisest choice to actually step into the situation and do something. Like, you're like, maybe I should act. Maybe I shouldn't act. I really don't know. Anybody struggle with that? Yeah, should I stay or should I go? That's perfect. Yeah, exactly. Should I stay or I didn't go, obviously, because I watched the carnage take place. And then I just slowly backed away as the administrator showed up. So they never knew that I was there. I don't know if it was on camera or what. But tonight, I want to talk about a situation that occurred that I feel like occurs in our lives a lot, right? And it's one of those situations where you could put the question up or the statement up on the board. It's one of those things where we're like, okay, I'm in a situation, or a situation's coming to my attention, and I have an option, right? I have the option of acting in the situation, or I have the option of saying, this doesn't impact my life, so I'm going to do my own thing. And so in the middle of those, it's like the situation's here, and you're right here. So like in the between time before it gets there, you have the time to think about it and say, okay, how do I discern, is it something worthwhile getting involved in, or is it just something I should just kind of step to the side and let it go by? Like, how do we know when we should actually step into a situation and take action because it's worthwhile, and how do we know when to say, you know what, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. And I'm be honest with you, sometimes especially as your student pastor, I'm so task-oriented that I look at situations and say, okay, I've got to get a job done, and I forget that my job is to people. My job isn't to grow a student ministry or make it the most amazing thing in the world or go to all these campuses. Like, that's stuff I'm trying to do. My job is to make sure that you all understand that the gospel is real, that every single student in Seminole County understands and has an encounter with God and realizes their identity comes from Him. Not from what people say about them, not how people treat them, not the things they have, but identity comes from Jesus Christ, the one who actually created them, handmade them, knows how many hairs they have, the one who laid His life down on the cross, raised it back up. That's the one their identity comes from. That's my task. That's not my job, but my calling. But so often in my life, I mistake my job for my calling. Well, my calling is my job, and so I have to apologize to you all and say, I apologize for those moments where I step back and say, I'm going to let somebody else handle the situation because I know that they can do it. Because I think sometimes God says, Akil, I've placed you here for a reason. So do the task that's been assigned to you. Don't back away and say somebody else can handle this better than me. Because sometimes, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, God puts you in a place because He knows that you, through His power and strength, are the best option. Does that make sense? So today we're going to talk about a story from Esther. We've been in Esther. It's girl power. It's going to be great. 17 verses, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fast. Well, it might be fast. Might not be fast. It's going to be great. And, well, I guess we'll just dive in. You'll see what happens. This is going to be a fun story. So go ahead. And by the way, I don't have my little clicker, so I feel lost, to be honest with you. So it says, when Mordecai learned all that had been done, Mordecai tore his clothes, and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and he cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one was allowed to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. And in every province, wherever the king's command and his decree reached, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and many of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. So we need to talk about something. What is going on right now? It's a great question to ask. Because last time we talked, basically Queen Esther came into power. The taxes were basically forgiven. Everything was great. The king was like, I love you because you're beautiful. Everything's great. My life is happy, right? Well, 5 years have passed since this moment, right? And, well, actually, before the 5 years, let's talk about chapter 3, what happens there. So this guy comes into power, right? His name's Haman. He comes into power, and it's Haman. It's a weird name. Haman comes into power, and he's a, hang on, let's see if I can say this right. He's a great something grandchild of, like, Agnon, and he is basically, it's called an Agagite. So he's an Agagite, which basically means he was an enemy of the Jews a long time ago, like way before he was born. Like his great-great-great-great-grandpappy was an enemy of the Jews. Remember that. It's important. It comes up later on. All right, so this guy basically gets empowered. Like right after Queen Esther comes into power and she's being beautiful and everything, and the king's just like, yeah, you're awesome. This guy comes into power, and what King Xerxes says, remember it's Artaxerxes, but we're going to call him Xerxes. What King Xerxes says is, hey, you're the number 2 guy in the entire region. All the countries I have, all this land I have, you're the number 2 guy. So Haman's like, I like that. I like that a lot. In fact, King Artaxerxes says, anybody who's within all my servants, all the royal officials, all the courts, anybody who comes in front of you has to bow down in front of you. Haman's like, I like that also. This is good stuff. Everything's going great and going kosher. Funny, kosher, because we're about to talk about a Jew. And then all of a sudden, Mordecai comes in the scene, and Mordecai's just like, nah, not bowing down. And at first, it's like, not a big deal. You know, some of the other court officials are like, hey, man, look, you should just bow. It's okay. It's not a big, just bow down. And Mordecai doesn't do it. So a couple days go on, and Mordecai's still not bowing down. So whoever these tattletales are, they go to Haman, and they say, hey, Haman, look, there's this guy who's not bowing down to you. I don't know if you noticed it or not, maybe because he's short, but you didn't know he's not bowing down to you. And so Haman's just like, all right, let's see what's going on here. So Haman goes over, and he's, Mordecai, what's going on? And Mordecai's just like, yeah, I'm a Jew, so I'm not bowing down to you. And Haman handles it so tactfully and so well. He doesn't. He's mad. He's very mad. To say he's mad is an understatement. Because 5 years later, Haman comes up with this plot, right? So you ever been mad about something for 5 years? If you have, get over it, okay? What the heck? Jesus saves and Jesus forgives. So for 5 years, Haman is upset. Because that's what people say. I'm not angry, I'm just upset. Upset about this issue. And he says, you know what? I'm not just going to take care of Mordecai, this Jewish man. By the way, Mordecai is the great something grandchild of King Saul. King Saul is actually the one who defeated Haman's great whatever king. So yeah, it's just bad blood. It's funny. So Mordecai is just like, I'm not going to bow down. Haman's like, all right, you know what? I'm going to take care of you. But not just you, all you people. All you guys are going to go down. But not today. So 5 years later, Haman comes to the king. He's like, hey, King Xerxes, remember that time where you basically got rid of taxes because your wife is so beautiful? Xerxes is like, yeah, I remember that. I guess that's how he sounds. I really don't know. And Haman says, well, there's this people group that are causing issues in your land. They actually have different laws than your laws, and they don't follow your laws, and it would actually benefit you to get rid of them all. And, because you know there's always a great and, that's right there, right? That's an A. There's a great and he says, and I will pay you 10,000 talents of silver. Now, some of y'all might ask, what is 10,000 talents of silver? A talent of silver is 75 pounds, right? Or a talent is 75 pounds. So that's $198 million. It's a lot of money, right? So King Xerxes, who's got rid of taxes because he's got his beautiful wife, is just like, so you're going to take some of the money from this $198 million in silver, give or take, because you know economies change over time, and you're going to use that to wipe out these people who are evidently causing me an issue? Done. Gives him his signet ring, takes it off, and they do a little emblem thing. And so Haman gets basically a draft, and now here's the interesting thing. King doesn't write it up. Remember we talked about if the king writes up a law, it can never be repealed, right? King doesn't write it up. He just gives a stamp of approval. So Haman drafts up this document saying, hey, in a year, 12 months, all the Jewish people, and it's interesting, it specifies the adults, the women, and the children. I don't know why it says the children, but the children, they're all going to be executed. And, because remember we have the ants, and you get to take all their money. So that's where we are. That's where the scene opens. So let me continue on. So when Esther's young men and her eunuchs, young women and her eunuchs came and told her, the queen was deeply distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai so that he might take off his sackcloth. But he would not accept them. Then Esther called for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who had been appointed to attend her, and ordered him to go to Mordecai. And Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree. It's like he's like, hey, man, I got it signed also, just in case. Also gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show it to Esther and explain it to her and command her to go to the king and beg his favor and plead with him on behalf of her people. So Esther clearly has no idea what's going on. All right, we see that, okay, Mordecai's there, and Mordecai's in sackcloth. So it's like the bag that potatoes come in, or onions. Let's go with onions. Onions come in, that's what he's wearing, just like a big one that covers everything. So he's wearing that, and there's a decree that says, okay, look, you can't enter into the king's gate, into this area, dressed like that. You don't show up mourning, you show up happy, because the king is your king. Xerxes is alive. His kingdom is beautiful and wonderful. You should be content with your king because he's amazing. So you don't show up sad. You don't show up mourning. All right? So Esther is thinking, oh, what happened now? All right, look, go get him some clothes. Like maybe he just forgot to pay his rent. Just put some clothes on him, please, so he can be taken care of. And Mordecai is just like, no. That's not going to happen. And Mordecai's like, hey, let me tell you what's going on. So Mordecai, and here's the thing, by the way. So Queen Esther's like over here. She's hanging out because she's not supposed to go see these men that aren't a part of the royal court. So she's over here. And so she's basically got her gophers. She's got her eunuchs that are going over and talking to Mordecai. So just imagine this guy probably got a lot of steps in. I like to keep my phone in my pocket to get steps. This guy goes a lot back and forth for Queen Esther. But so he goes to talk to Mordecai, and Mordecai says, hey, look, I can't do it. Here's what's going on. In fact, this guy's going to genocide all the Jews, right? And so this guy's like, all right, well, let me go tell Queen Esther. So he goes to tell Queen Esther. How does she respond? I don't know. Let's see. And Hathach went and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to go to Mordecai and say, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king king inside of the inner court without being called, there is but one law, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king extends or holds out the golden scepter so that he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come into the king these 30 days. Y'all, first of all, if you don't see your spouse for 30 days and they live like right next to you, that's weird. That's sad. You need to have a relationship, just communion, okay? It's just strange. So what she basically says is, hey, look, Mordecai, I know that you want me to go to the king and go talk to him about this issue, but I don't know if I can do that, because here's what happens if I go talk to the king who hasn't seen me in 30 days. Now remember, the king was infatuated with her, just like, oh, you're amazing, 5 years ago. 5 years can change a lot of things in people's perspective and life as well. So she's just like, I don't know if I should do this. I might die. You know what happens. You know the law. I know the law. People die from this. So how does Mordecai respond? Well, actually, before Mordecai responds, I think about it this way. If I were Mordecai, in that moment, I'd be like, all right, all is lost. There's no hope. Like, we had one opportunity. We had one shot, and you said, nah. But thankfully, I'm not Mordecai. Mordecai is way wiser than I am, because here's what Mordecai says. And Esther told Mordecai what And they told Mordecai what Esther had said. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. Oh, snap. Okay. Now let's pause for a second. Earlier, it might have seemed like Mordecai gave away that Esther was a Jew, right? Because she said, hey, or he said, to save your people. And it could seem like, oh, wait. Are you a Jewish person? No. See, it would seem like to the eunuch that, you know what, this guy's trying to play on the compassion of the queen, saying that all the subjects, all the people in the kingdom, whether they're high and mighty or low, are subjects and a part of the people of Persia. Well, now that idea is gone. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Mordecai all of a sudden gets real smart and real wise. I don't know how old this guy was, but he had some tact to his thought process. He really, really did. Can you stop that, please? Thank you. Because he goes up to the eunuch, whether the guy is running to him or not, and he says, hey, all right, here's what's going to happen. Remind her of who she is. Remind her that she's Jewish, and that even though she's the queen, because this proclamation is being issued, all Jewish people, no matter how high-ranking or low-ranking they are, they're going to be impacted by this decision, right? And then he says, but you know what? Here's the thing. In all honesty, if she doesn't want to do anything, that's fine, because deliverance will come another way. He's like, I know God's word. I've seen how God's come through again and again and again for his people. He's redeemed his people so many times. And here's the thing. If God wants to save his people, if he wants to rescue his people, which he says he will do, he's going to do it. And here's the crazy thing. He doesn't need a human to do it. But then Mordecai, it's like he switches gears, like drops the second gear. He's like, but maybe, just maybe, this is the reason you've been in the palace for the past 9 years. Maybe the whole reason that the king got tired of his old queen and then had a beauty contest and you had to wait for 4 years to actually meet him and then finally said, oh, wow, you're beautiful. And you came into power and you've been there for 5 years, even though the king hasn't seen you. Maybe the reason that you're here is for this one moment. Mordecai issued a challenge. He's like, hey, you know what? Do something about it. Do something about it. Because if you don't, God will. And so how does Esther respond? Let's see. When Esther told them to, Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go, gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, and hold a feast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though if it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Esther kind of switches her perspective all of a sudden. And she says, okay, you know what? Let's go have everybody who's in the area, all the Jewish people, go fast. Now, if you rewind, you remember that earlier it said that the Jewish people were basically lamenting, they were weeping, and they were fasting. So most of them are already fasting, right? Why were they fasting? Why do people fast? People fast usually to try and get closer to some spiritual deity. If you're Jewish, you're trying to get closer to Yahweh, their God, right? So the Jewish people were fasting because they're trying to seek God's wisdom, God's counsel, and say, God, please come through in this situation. So all of a sudden, Esther says, hey, you know what? You guys, everybody fast for 3 days. Don't eat or drink. That's rough. 3 days, day or night. That's a hard fast. Everybody. And then she says something just ridiculous. She says, I'm going to fast. She's the queen of Persia. I'm going to fast, and my 7 maidens are going to fast as well. That's a lot of fasting. But why? What all of a sudden happened, they made her say, you know what, I'm going to try and do something about it. Because her response, if you go back, was simply this right here. You know what? If I perish, I perish. That's ridiculous. You know what Esther found in the conversation between, well, it was between her and her uncle, but we have the eunuchs going back and forth. She found a resolve. She found a resolve. She said, you know what? This is something I'm going to stand for. This is something worth holding on to. She basically said, maybe I am here for a reason. Maybe my life isn't just a random sequence of unfortunate events. Because if you remember, Esther was an orphan. Her mom and dad, dead. They're gone. Then she's forced for 4 years to sit and basically get beautified and go through all these processes to meet a man that he may or may not like her. And if he doesn't like her, she's basically cast away from his presence forever. Like, she can't see him anymore. But she's not allowed to go back to her family. She's just kind of hanging out in the palace. And yet, when the king meets her, he says, it's good. I like this. 5 years later, it seems that maybe things are okay, maybe they're not so okay. But for 30 days, the king hasn't summoned her. The king hasn't called for her. The king maybe lost a little sparkle in his eye when he saw her. So 9 years. For 9 years, she's just been going through and just been waiting and just been seeing what's going on. But then Mordecai mentions something to her and makes her say, you know what, maybe there's a purpose behind this place I'm in right now. Maybe there's a purpose behind what's going on in my life right now. And so she says, you know what? I'm going to do something about it. And so many of us in our lives right now, we are in situations where we say, I don't know why I'm here. Honestly, there's some of you in this room who say, I don't know why I'm here. Some of you were forced to be here. Some of you I know don't want to be here. Some of you want to be here. Some of you are just kind of like, I mean, people are here, so why not? It's something to do. But can I tell you that you're in this room right now in this church, surrounded by these people for a reason? That you have the home life you have for a reason. And I don't know your home life. I don't know how good or bad it is, but there's a purpose behind what's going on in your life. That you're at the school you're at for a reason. That your family's in the financial shape it's in for a reason. That you have your special giftings and your insecurities and your doubts and your fears and even your things you boast in for a reason, for a purpose. And here's something that maybe you don't hear that often, but I want you to hear if you don't hear anything else. You're on this planet for a reason. Your existence isn't just to live and die, but you're here for a reason, a unique and specific purpose that's only for you, that no one else can do, because there's a unique and specific and purposeful God who says, look, I intentionally created you for a reason. I handmade you out of billions of people because I want you to do something incredible that only you can do, and I'm going to do it through you. And so Esther in this moment says, you know what, I found my resolve. I found something worth just giving everything for. In fact, here it is right here. Maybe. It's the next one. That's the last one, right? Okay, that's what I thought. So, what is your no matter what? Because in Esther's eyes, all of a sudden, she went from, hey, I could die if I go talk to the king, to no matter what it takes, I'm going to make sure these people are saved. She said, if I die, I die. Well, actually, she said, if I perish, I perish. Can you imagine the resolve that takes? Not just to say I'm going to have a conversation with somebody who literally can make the choice between whether I'm going to live or die, but also to say I'm going to step out of my comfort zone, because right now the only person who knows she's Jewish at the time was Mordecai and her. Nobody else. So she maybe could have escaped from that punishment. Maybe. She's the high queen. She's favored. She had 7 maidens before she was even a queen. The king still hasn't placed taxes into place because of her. Clearly, she's in a comfortable spot. She is a Jewish young woman sitting as a Persian king on a massive nation. She's in a comfortable spot. And yet she says, I'm going to give all this up because no matter what it costs me, no matter what it takes, I want to make sure I live out God's purpose for my life. Because God has a purpose for my life. He has me here for a reason. And maybe it's not just to say, yay, life is comfortable, but maybe it's to say, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice all that I am so I can make sure that these people are taken care of. And I love this part about Esther because, like I said last week, this book of the Bible doesn't mention God's name. But this moment right here is an exact image of who Jesus Christ is. Because what Jesus did was said, you know what, I'm going to come to the earth and I'm going to live a perfect life and I'm going to lay my life down. Because no matter what it takes, I want to see these people redeemed. I want to see them made whole. I want them to know that there's a purpose and a place for them. And it's not what the world says about them, which seems to change and go all over the place. It's simply this. You're uniquely made. You're set apart. You're special. There's no one ever going to be like you. And you know what? You're loved not because of what you do, what you know, or who you are. It's because of the fact that God made you in his image. You're the imago Dei, the image of the invisible God. And because of that, God said, no matter what it takes, I want to rescue these people. And so he gave us an option. And that was simply this right here. Jesus laying his life down on the cross, raising it back up, and us acknowledging who Jesus Christ is. I said that really fast, but that's all it is. It's just me saying, you know what, Jesus, you are who you say you are. You can do what you say you can do, and you're faithful. And because you're faithful, no matter what it costs me, Akil Mims, God, I'm going to trust you. No matter what no matter where it takes me, God, I'm going to believe in you. I'm going to put my hope, my trust, my faith in you. God, no matter what the church size looks like, because I came from a huge church, right? And in the process of interviewing with this church, one of my fears was, I don't know if they can afford, I might have to get 2 jobs to work here. But then I realized something. I realized I was called to you all, not to this building, to this church. It was when this guy leaned up against my shoulder and said, you can't handle me, that I realized, okay, God, you're calling me to this church. And he's sitting on the front row. I realized I was called to the body of believers that are here. And I said, no matter what it costs me, God, I'm going to follow you and I'm going to be obedient to you because, God, you've never failed me. You've never let me down. You've never forsaken me. God, I might forsake myself. I might forsake you, but God, you don't abandon your people because it's not in your nature. It's not in your character. Because it's not in your nature. It's not in your character. God, I'm going to walk with you and I'm going to trust you no matter what it costs me. And what does it cost me? It cost me my lifestyle. That's what it cost me. It cost me be willing to say, you know what, God, I don't need all these things, all these affirmations, all these accolades and awards. What I simply need is to know that you love me, that you have a place for me, and you have a plan for my life. And today, God, I'm going to try and trust in that. Tomorrow, who knows what's going to happen. Overmorrow, who knows what's going to happen. But today, God, I'm going to trust you. And if I perish, I perish. But I perish knowing that I am walking with the perfect, resurrected, holy King. I know that I'm going somewhere that is better than where I am today. That is why Esther was able to do what she said she was going to do. If I perish, I perish. Because she believed and trusted in the God of her people. And so I ask you all today, what are you putting your belief and hope in? What's your no matter what? Some of you all say, no matter what, I'm going to get A's. No matter what, I'm going to date this person. No matter what, I'm going to achieve this. But is it worth the cost? Like for me, when I was your age, I didn't have a lot of no matter what's, right? I thought I was going to perfect the artificial heart, retire at 50, do all these things. But one thing for sure, I knew I was like, no matter what it cost me, this is what's going to happen. I wanted to be a father more than anything else. That was my only goal in life, right? And there are things that I wanted to do to get to that goal. Because I knew that, okay, if I'm going to be a great dad, I got to understand what it means to be a dad. I got to follow God because he's got the whole father thing pretty much figured out, right? So I'm going to follow him. If I want to be able to take care of a family, first I need a woman who actually knows what she's doing. Because, like, I can teach math and stuff, but I can't teach kids how to read. Like, I'm good with babies and stuff, but there are things that I just don't know. So I need to be a man who's worthy of having a great woman alongside me. So the things that I needed to aspire to achieve first, become a father. But I said, no matter what it takes, I'm not going to mess up my chances of having kids. So I said, I'm not going to do anything in a certain intimate way to ruin that possibility, no matter what it cost me. There were a lot of things I did that were just stupid and foolish in my life, but I said, no matter what it cost me, I'm not letting anything get in the way of this goal. Well, I thank God that nothing got in the way of it because now I realize, you know what? Maybe, Jesus, I should just say, no matter what it costs me, I'm going to follow you. No matter what it costs me, I'm just going to walk with you because you're worthy of walking with. So I ask you all, very simply, but very honestly, what is your no matter what? Where you are right now, today. What are you sacrificing your life for? What are you giving everything you are to? What are you putting your identity, your hope, your faith, your belief, your trust in? That's your no matter what. And my question for you is it worth it? Is that no matter what worth your life? Because what if it isn't? And you've wasted your life away?